Continuing on with the one underrated player from every NHL team series, next up we have the Central Division. Now this one for me was actually a little bit tougher than the other ones, but I hope you guys still do enjoy it, and make sure to let me know down in the comment section who your pick for each team would be. So without further ado, let's get right into the video. Starting off with the Minnesota Wild, I decided to go with defenseman Jared Spurgeon. He's 29 years old. He was a 6th round pick, 156th overall back in the 2008 NHL entry draft. Over his career, 565 games, 66 goals, 171 assists for 237 points. This year, he's having a career year. He's on pace to crack his career high in points, which is very impressive considering he is 29 years old and he's only getting better season after season, which is always nice to see. He has 10 goals and 22 assists for 32 points, and we are only 56 games into the season, so Jared Spurgeon is well on his way to a 40 to 45 point season, which is pretty impressive, and you don't really hear this guy talked about too much, obviously, because when you talk about defensemen on the Minnesota Wild, the main focus is around guys like Ryan Suter, and I feel like Minnesota is just an underrated team in general that don't really get talked about all that much, but it seems like every single year they're just a very solid team. They're always in the playoffs, and this year again, they're holding the second wildcard spot. They have 59 points, and Jared Spurgeon really is a big part of that. He logs a lot of ice time for this team, and I just think he's very underrated, and he doesn't get talked about a lot, and he really should, because without him, I don't think this Minnesota Wild team would be in a playoff spot right now. Next up for the St. Louis Blues, I decided to go with Vince Dunn, and he's 22 years old. He's a defenseman, a 2nd round pick, 56th overall back in 2015, and that is looking like a very, very good pick. 125 games played so far in his career, 12 goals and 35 assists for 47 points, and this year 50 games played, 7 goals, 16 assists for 23 points. If you don't know who Vince Dunn is, you've probably seen him in that video where he actually got in a fight in the tunnel in the American Hockey League, which was pretty hilarious, but nonetheless, he is a very, very solid young defenseman, and I definitely think he's going to play a huge part of the St. Louis Blues' future. St. Louis team that's currently in the playoffs after that horrendous start that they had, and I really do think that Vince Dunn is a big part of that. He logs around 17 minutes of ice time per game. Obviously, the big number one defenseman on the St. Louis Blues is Alex Pietrangelo, but Vince Dunn actually has more points than Pietrangelo this season, having played 7 more games, but still, that's pretty impressive, and it shows you that this young defenseman is going to be the real deal in a couple of years, in my opinion, and I don't think he gets talked about a lot, but he really is a vital part of this team, and he's only 22 years old. He's only going to get better, so that's why for the St. Louis Blues, I decided to go with Vince Dunn. For the Dallas Stars, I decided to go with Esa Lindell. Now, you guys can probably see a pattern here. This is the 3rd defenseman already. He's 24 years old. He was a 3rd round pick, 74th overall back in the 2012 NHL draft. He has 212 games played so far in his career, 20 goals and 48 assists for 68 points. And this year, 55 games played, 7 goals and 16 assists for 23 points. Now, like Vince Dunn, I think Esa Lindell is going to be a huge part of the Dallas Stars' future, and he's a big part of their team now. As a 24-year-old, he logs around 24 minutes of ice time per game. Now, obviously, this Dallas Blue line is a little bit weaker when you get past guys like Lindell, Klingberg, and Heiskanen, and that's why I think those 3 log so many minutes, and I don't think Lindell gets talked about a lot, obviously because Miro Heiskanen is a rookie. People love rookies when they come into the league, and obviously when they play as good as Heiskanen is with 25 points, and he logs around 23 minutes, I think rightfully so, he should get talked about a lot. And then obviously John Klingberg is the number 1 defenseman on this team, 25 minutes of time on ice per game, but I just think Esa Lindell is a huge part of this team, and he takes a lot of pressure off the guys like Heiskanen and Klingberg, because having 3 very solid defensemen is much better than just having 2, so I think he's a big part of why the Dallas Stars are where they are right now in the season, and if they want to make the postseason, I think he has to continue this play all the way to the end of the year. Next up, we have the Nashville Predators, and you guys saw this one in the thumbnail. I went with Viktor Arvidsson. Now, he probably is the most notable and the best player on this list. He's 25 years old. He was a 4th round pick, 112th overall back in the 2014 NHL draft, and that is looking like one of the best draft steals in the past couple of seasons in his career so far. He has 254 games played, 92 goals, and 78 assists for 170 points. In my opinion, he's one of the most underrated goal scorers in the entire NHL, and this year in 34 games, he has 24 goals and 8 assists for 32 points. Only 8 assists, but like I said, I think this guy is just a pure goal scorer, and he's been injured throughout the majority of the year. He's only played in 34 games, and he already has 24 goals. If he was to appear in every game so far this year and he wasn't injured, he could almost be around 35 to 40 goals already, on pace for a 50-goal season. That would be pretty impressive. I definitely think Viktor Arvidsson easily will hit 40 goals this season, and he doesn't get talked about a lot because I feel like this national team, it's kind of just a collective effort. They don't really have that one superstar that gets a lot of the attention. It's just they are entirely a good team. But I think Viktor Arvidsson, in my opinion, is the most talented guy on this team. Maybe you could argue Filip Forsberg is, but I'm just a huge fan of Arvidsson, and I think he's one of the best goal scorers in the entire NHL. Next up, we have the Colorado Avalanche, and I decided to go with Carl Soderberg. He's a 33-year-old center, second-round pick, 49th overall back in the 2004 NHL draft. In his NHL career so far, 455 games played, 81 goals, and 149 assists for 230 points. And this year, he's having a career season as far as offense goes. In 55 games played, he has 18 goals, which is a career high, and 16 assists for 34 points. And in my opinion, this is very important because this team desperately needs depth scoring. They need guys to take the pressure off of the big guns like McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog, who get the majority of the attention. And this Avalanche team is really struggling right now. They're on a 7-game losing streak. It's going to be interesting to see what they do at the trade deadline, but I really do think Carl Soderberg has just been a common presence for this team, and he's just been very, very solid all year, and he doesn't get talked about a lot because when you talk about Colorado, obviously the only person really worth talking about in a lot of people's eyes is McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog. But overall, I think this team just needs more depth scoring, and Carl Soderberg really has been the only guy, along with guys like Kerfoot and Comfort, that have really given them consistent bottom 6 scoring. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Avalanche throughout the rest of the season, but in my opinion, Carl Soderberg is the most underrated player on this team. And finally, finishing off the video with the hottest team in the NHL, the Chicago Blackhawks, I decided to go with Alex DeBrincat. Now, he is a very solid player. Obviously, he is a well-known guy, but I still just think he's very underrated because he's only 21 years old, and the things he's doing for this Blackhawks team is very, very impressive, and most definitely they would not be on the streak they are on right now without him. He was a second-round pick, 39th overall back in the 2016 NHL draft. What a pick that was by the Chicago Blackhawks, and if they never made that draft pick, it would really be interesting to see where they are at this point in time. Over his career so far, 138 games played, 56 goals and 49 assists for 105 points. Another guy like Arvidsson, I think he's a pure goal scorer with a little bit more playmaking than Arvidsson, but nonetheless a very, very solid offensive player. And this year, 56 games played, 28 goals, tying his totals of all of last season, and 25 assists for 53 points, well on his way to probably a 75 to 80 point season, which is very impressive for a 21-year-old. And obviously a lot of the attention around Chicago goes to Patrick Kane because he's having such an amazing season. But Alex DeBrincat and Dylan Strome have been a very, very solid duo for this team ever since they did acquire Dylan Strome, and I think DeBrincat is really bringing out the best in Strome, and DeBrincat is probably the best thing that could have happened to Dylan Strome at this point in his NHL career. And I think we should start talking about Alex DeBrincat a lot more because in a couple years I could honestly see him being one of the top players in the entire league. Next up is the Winnipeg Jets. Now, I uploaded this video. I had to delete it because somehow I forgot to put this one in the video. I had all the graphics made and everything. I just completely forgot. I don't understand why, but nonetheless, with the Winnipeg Jets, I decided to go with Brandon Tanev. Now, a lot of the attention when you talk about Winnipeg goes to how many talented guys they have. You know, Patrick Laine, Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Blake Wheeler, and all those guys. But in my opinion, what makes this team so good is their depth. I love Brandon Tanev. I think he's one of the best bottom 6 forwards in the entire NHL. He's 27 years old. He was undrafted, and in his career so far, 171 games played, 21 goals, and 22 assists for 43 points. And this year, 56 games played. He's really having a career year, 11 goals and 10 assists for 21 points. He is very, very fast. He's always out there finishing his hit. He can kill penalties. He can really just do it all, and he's one of the best role players in my opinion, like I said, in the entire league. He's a guy I think a lot of teams would just love to have on their team. So that's why for the Winnipeg Jets, I decided to go with Brandon Tanev. So that is going to wrap up this video. I really hope you guys did enjoy, and like I said at the start, make sure to go let me know down in the comment section who your picks are for each team. I actually recently just posted on my community tab to send some mock trades for the next NHL Deal or No Deal video, so if you did not do that already, make sure to try to get that in. And with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.